Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to my library tour for the Little Book Room for 2025. This is not the rest of Hyde Cottage. This is not all of my books. This is just this little space, which is pretty much floor-to-ceiling books, although I think I could probably fit another bookcase in here somehow. The thing that most beginning book hoarders do, the mistake they tend to make, is that they don't go vertical enough. And there is room here in this room vertically for more books. But for the moment, we're just dealing with the ones that are in here. I may redo this book in a month, this room in a month, just a little, depending on what kind of a bookcase I can find. Got to find exactly the right thing, exactly the right dimensions. But we're on to the next shelf here. We are doing a Joe bookcase, rock solid, and we've got a lot of books to go still. So, how are we going to do this next one? This has transwise books, but also double stacked books. I guess we'll do all the ones that are outside the norm first. So the first one we have is this thing, Ken's Guide to the Bible. That is just, it takes you through the Bible problematic verse by problematic verse and gives you an idea of what's going on there based on these little legends. Is it war? Is it my favorite one is when the Almighty imposes on a woman. Yes, there we go. I don't know if you're going to be able to make it out. That is the symbol for when the Almighty imposes on a woman. It's a slim little thing. I wish, I like everybody else who's ever read it, I wish it were 10 times longer than it is. Then we have, this is by Daniel Loxton and Donna Prothero. This is Abominable Science. And this is a thick, heavily illustrated thing that goes through all the various claims of pseudoscience and cryptozoology especially, and just demolishes them. Demolishes every one of them. It can be painful reading for someone who wants to believe in cryptozoology, but it is also wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Okay, so those are transwise books, but then we've got books in front too, like for instance this. This is a mass market paperback of the single greatest novel ever written, Meg, by Steve Alton. This is not the cover design of the hardcover. We'll be getting to the cover design of the hardcover, because I'm sure at least one copy of it is in here. But this is the cover design of the mass market paperback, which shows a T-Rex being eaten by a Meg, and that's actually reflected in the opening scene of the book. The opening scene of the book does not. It takes place millions of years ago. It does not take place in the present day like the rest of the book, and it is a T-Rex, the most formidable land predator ever, going for a little swim, going for a swim in shallow water where a megalodon sees its chance and eats this thing. We have no idea if they did that, but nevertheless, it makes for an awful good cover. so I had to have that. This next one. All right. Well, this next one is a good example of the fact that the little book room here is porous. It is not frozen in place. Because this is a book that I just got recently, except the minute I got it, I knew that I would be bringing it in here. And it's this. It's the second mystery bedside book edited by John Creasy. And I would definitely take the first one, and I don't know if there's a third one. I have no idea. I don't go collecting for these things. I don't go hunting for them online. I get what comes to me at my bookstore. And I got, this is a tiny little thing. I'm assuming that it's lightweight, so I'm assuming it was done on ration paper. Well, 1961, so maybe austerity paper. But this is just a collection of short fiction and nonfiction about mysteries, and I thought that I would dip a toe in when I first got it. I read the whole thing and loved it. Just loved it. Just like I knew I would. Sometimes you just have a feel for what you're going to love. All right. Okay, well, we've got this old thing. When was this? Are you going to tell me your publication date? Almost 100 years ago, 1931. This is a guide to the State House here in Boston. There's the famous gold leaf dome. I'm sure it'll open with a picture of the State House in 1931. Yes, there we go. That is the pinnacle of Beacon Hill, the center of Boston governance here, at the top of the common. I take people here when I have visitors. I take people here. Once upon a time, when I had visitors, I used to take them on a long tour of the State House itself instead of just pointing it out to them. But a lot of people ended up getting very bored by that, so I stopped. I stopped doing it. I know every inch of the State House, every warren, every sub basement, every nook, every cranny, and especially the two libraries that are in the building, neither of which are open to the public, and one of which is barely known at all. For a long time, I had a ritual, a daily routine, and it included the State House. I had a daily routine up in the precincts right there on Beacon Hill, and it included this. So when I saw this old guidebook, I don't know, there's probably a modern guidebook to the State House, but this takes you through everything. This takes you through, uh, for instance, all of the artwork in the State House, all of the busts and monuments and statues, all of the paintings. Really, really good. And then there's also this. This is uh, by a McIntyre, a McAvoy McIntyre. This is a walking tour of Beacon Hill. Same thing, only decades later. I think this came out in the 70s. In 1975, this is a tour through Boston's most famous neighborhood. Its most Hollywood-friendly, most touristed neighborhood, Beacon Hill. Where I have known many, many people who've lived on Beacon Hill. I know every address. I know if you walk me to a building that has now been cheaply subdivided into styrofoam apartments for college undergraduates, I will know every single bit of that building's history. Who was born there? Who married there? What was written there and what wasn't written there? What all that sort of stuff. Going back forever. Going back until the building was built. Going back in a lot of cases to these houses on Beacon Hill when these buildings were built in order to have a water view, which you wouldn't think now, but once upon a time that land behind Beacon Hill was not filled in. It was a water view, and could be quite lovely and looked permanent, looked like it would be around forever, but nope. Nope, it's all completely different now. But I don't. I used to tour people around Beacon Hill too and just bore the pants off them with stories about how, Bronson Alcott. Nobody's interested in that, so I stopped doing it. I stopped doing it for Beacon Hill, and I stopped doing it for Beacon Hill's chief ornament, the State House. Oh, all right, okay. Then we have another. This is another example of something that percolated into this room very quickly. 2024. This is the Selected Tales of Kafka, translated by Mark Harmon. And I knew, as soon as I was reading this, I thought this is such a good book, such a good, careful volume that I definitely wanted in here. Regardless of whether or not it ends up being my favorite translation, I still want it in here. So I brought it in. I wonder if that's a couple of books just in one pile that are fairly recent. But anyway, that gets rid of all of the shrubbery books, and now we can deal with the shelf itself. Aiming for our 15-minute mark. So the first one is Philip Lopate. This is The Glorious American Essay, an essay anthology from the guy that did The Art of the Personal Essay, which is also in this room somewhere. He did a trilogy of these. He did. I don't remember the make-weight names, but it was a weird, ill-fated trilogy. They did not all look the same. They didn't all have original hardcover productions. I think one of them, or maybe two of them, came out as original paperbacks. I guess because sales were soft. I never asked. I never did learn the details why this looked so weird. It's a shame too, because it's a great set. It's a great anthology set. But my favorite of the three of them is also the nicest looking one, so I was able to save that. Okay, then we have a paperback. I am not blurbed in here, as far as I remember. Richard O'Barry, Ken Balcom, Jane Goodall. I don't think I am blurbed on this thing at all. Richard Ellis, of course. Oh, no, I am. Oh, fantastic. The National. All right, this is by David Kirby, and this is Death at SeaWorld. A major book. I think it had major ramifications. This and the documentary Blackfish, I think, had major ramifications to change a lot of how SeaWorld and other oceanic parks deal with killer whales. They go out to the open ocean and hunt for the adolescents or the small children of these extremely intelligent, extremely communicative, extremely social, and extremely wide-ranging apex predators. Capture those young and put them in concrete cages. not allowed to roam anymore. They don't ever get to talk with anyone of their own kind in their own languages, and they are forced to perform for a clapping audience of evolved apes. It's a nightmare. It's absolutely dystopic to watch. It still happens. People, these kinds of shows, I think, still happen. I don't know that SeaWorld does them. I'm not certain that they do them with the frequency that they once did. But you all know the slogan, right? That they had for years and years. That when it was time for a killer whale show, they would say the first few rows are going to get wet because the whales are going to splash around and do all sorts of jokes and tricks and routines for their human captors. And where you might be able to stretch that a little when it comes to Terciops, when it comes to bottlenose dolphins, because you're not 100% sure that the bottlenose dolphin isn't enjoying himself. You're not 100% sure of that. Dolphins are a little mercurial and they're awful intelligent and do tricks on their own in the wild. So you're not 100% sure that if you're not really nice to them, maybe they're not so miserable. But there is no doubt about where a killer whale, an adult killer whale, belongs. There is no doubt about that at all. None whatsoever. Probably there isn't any with dolphins either, but with killer whales, it's like having a wolf do tricks. They belong, first of all, most intensely, they belong with each other. They are an intensely communal species. And second, they belong in miles and miles of open ocean. And this is the story of what will go wrong if you do that. Not if, it's just a matter of time. In this case, with an absolutely enormous killer whale named Tilikum, the size of a city bus, and who early on in his adolescent captivity, not at SeaWorld, but at some off-rate SeaWorld in another country, developed his first taste for homicide. He developed a taste for hunting and killing his handlers. And it rapidly became known. The handlers became known. Make sure you're not in the water with Tilikum. Make sure you're not near Tilikum. Even when you're not in the water, make sure you're not near him because he's watching. And don't you think that he's not. He's watching for a chance. He was twice the size of the other killer whales, and they still put him on the shows because that was a crowd pleaser. His sheer size was a crowd pleaser. And eventually, inevitably, after, I would argue, half a dozen deaths, I think this book pins 3 on him. I think that the book makes it clear that it was twice that number. Eventually, there was a trainer named Dawn, a wonderful, bright, loved woman, a professional, who was outside the tank. She was feeding Tilikum. He was in the water, and she was on the side of the tank, and she lost her concentration for a fraction of a second. That was all it took. Tilikum grabbed her and mercilessly killed her, toyed with her, brutalized her, and killed her. Now, this wasn't when a show was happening, but the SeaWorld where it happened had dining areas below the level of the water tank so that you could dine while watching the whales swimming by in these big plate glass windows where you were eating, and those people were there. They saw what Tilikum did. And what he did was horrifying. The sheer power of this animal is horrifying. And the sheer force of what he was doing to Dawn pulled her skin off. All of it at once. Like a shoe out of a sock. And that, I mean, who knows what? Those people have never said anything. I'm sure that SeaWorld settled huge amounts of money on them for non-disclosure. But this book makes it clear that was the result of torture. That as bad as Tilikum was, with a long string of murders to his name, it was all done to him. He was traumatized and turned into the orca equivalent of a psychopath from an early age, through no fault of his own whatsoever. And it changed the way SeaWorld did things. And so it's a gripping book. It's extremely dark reading. David Kirby is not trying to. He's not trying to be Jane Goodall. He's not trying to change your mind about these animals. But the conclusions that he comes to are unescapable. And from the early on in the book, long before he actually comes to them, you are reading this book saying this has got to stop. And it, to a large extent, has, thanks to this book. So, and it's gripping reading as well. I reviewed it for the National in Abu Dhabi, and I was so moved. if you're a veteran reviewer, you're starting your book review before you start the book. Once you get the commission, and the National paid really well, so it was a commission that made you sit up and take notice. It wasn't $50. Once you get the book, you start making your review, and then you read the book and figure out what you're going to do and what you're going to add and what you're going to emphasize. And I was so moved by the book that I actually started my review with a personal story, which I almost never do. I almost never am moved to do that, much less find an editor who's willing to allow it. If I can find a copy, if I can find a link to that review, I will leave it down below. All right. Okay, this is another thing that is, I think this is a UK. Yeah, this is a UK hardcover of Frank Conroy's novel, Body and Soul. Are you going to give me a picture of the author? Okay, well, good enough. This is a novel by an author who was extremely well known for a memoir. He wrote a memoir decades before this called Stop Time that is great. It's one of the great American memoirs. And Forever and Ever, Forever and Ever seemed to have a novel inside him, a really good novel inside him. And this is it. And it's fantastic. It is so much worth your time. I think that it whiffs the ending, but I think most contemporary fiction whiffs its ending. But that the ending, the whiffed ending, I'm talking about the last 10 pages, not the last 10 chapters. So the most 99.9% of the book is fantastic, about a piano prodigy, a young boy who is a piano prodigy. And he's a piano prodigy before he even knows that he is one, before anybody else knows that he is one. He's just got the knack. He needs teaching like all prodigies do, but his talent is off the scales prodigious. And it's his story. Basically, it's a novel about him, and it is very, very good. Then we have Gil Hyatt. This is Poets in the Landscape. He was a literary figure and a classicist and wrote a lot of books. I have a lot of his books. I think this was probably his most accessible and also his most famous book. He did a big thing called The Classical Tradition, which I long to find in hardcover. It's the trade paperback that I always see. It's a big book. It's like 800 pages. And the trade paperback that I always see is just not strong enough. But this is his tour through the natural settings of all of the great Roman poets, the ancient Roman poets. And we get these black and white pictures as well. So you get, there we go, look at that. He tours their home places, their birthplaces, their neighborhoods, also the locations that they made famous. Horace, for instance, and his famous Sabine Farm. There was a real strong literary movement, if you want to call it that. I think it was also true in a lot of cases. A real strong literary movement in Roman poets to be incredibly citified people, but to long for the simplicity of the countryside, and to commemorate that in your verse. So we've got Catullus, Virgil, Propertius, Horace, Tibullus, Ovid, and Juvenal. Just in a lovely illustrated hardcover. I've seen other versions of Poets in the Landscape that don't have the illustrations, but I waited for this one. Then we have Andrew Pettigrew and Arthur de Wedwin. This is their book, The Library, A Fragile History. Beautiful, beautiful thing here. And it's a history of libraries from their earliest times, and also stressing all throughout how important they are. And I reviewed this as well. Did I not? There's a review in here from 2021. Oh no, that was a freelancer of mine who reviewed this for Big Canoe News in northern Georgia. But I reviewed it as well. I wonder if my review is in here. Maybe not. But there are a number of books about libraries in this room. I'm a big fan of libraries, even though ironically I don't go to one at the moment. In fact, there is some debate about whether or not my library card is currently current. It's some debate that I have yet to settle. I have yet to fix that question. Then we have a little trade paperback. This is the Writing of Fiction by Edith Wharton, which I have found a number of times. I've talked about it a number of times. I've written about it on my revived book blog, Steve Reads. A very interesting book, not at all what it purports to be, but very interesting. Oh no. Oh, all right. This is rather extravagant. We have a second copy of Perdido Street Station in the same, beautiful trade paperback. We had so that's two. That's one on two shelves in a row. I guess maybe I might have thought of it as a backup book. I usually don't indulge in backup books because that way lies madness. Then suddenly you've got 5 copies of a book, and I've precious little room for books here as it is. Uh, now, all right, I think I've shown you this book before. I'll happily show it to you again. This is from 2004, and this is The Other Man by Mike Bergen. This is you may recognize that face. Here, let me show you. Let me show you how you recognize that face, because if you do, then you do for only one reason, uh, in only one context. Yes, Baywatch. He was on Baywatch, uh, and at the time when it was the most popular TV show in the world, and dated his famous co-star. And this is his story. Not so much of being on Baywatch. I would very much like that volume. I know there are non-disclosure agreements, and I know that you don't want to step on toes or be disrespectful to the dead, but there are a whole bunch of stories you could tell about that show that everybody would find interesting, that have long since expired any kind of NDA. No one's going to care. No one's going to worry about it. I know it's a part of your life that is behind you now, but nevertheless, that would be a great book. And this book shows that he could write it. I was actually surprised at how enjoyable this was, how heartfelt it was. This is not the story of his dating his famous co-star, Pamela Anderson. This is the story of him dating Carolyn Bessette, who went on to marry John F. Kennedy Jr. It's their story as much as it is anything else. And she was a difficult woman, high-strung, needy, but also demanding. According to our author, she helped to make him Pygmalion style, helped to train out a lot of his New Jerseyisms in his speech, helped to give him poise and confidence, helped to put him on the map in the modeling world. That would be touching enough as it is, but the other element here is uncontrollable love that happened at the worst time and in the worst circumstance for both people involved. And I thought it was really well done, and also surprisingly funny. There are a couple of stories in here that are obviously often told by the author. There are a couple of stories in there that are genuinely funny and well done. So anyway, that's my unusual recommendation for the day. Then we have this. This is Boswell's London Journal. This was put together by Frederick Pottle, who was a Boswell scholar, and he mined the Boswell journals, the Boswell letters, the Boswell everything, to come out with a shelf full of Boswell books that are great. They, believe it or not, they are great. This is the best of them all. I believe that this book would give Boswell a measure of minor immortality, even if he hadn't written the life of Ben Jonson or Samuel Johnson. I wouldn't give. Oh my! But anyway, he's famous, of course, for his life of Johnson. But I think he'd be famous anyway, in a lesser way, for this book, because his London Journal is incredible, just incredible. It's vivid with life. It's vivid with personal portraits. It's also vivid with filth and disgusting stuff. It's all of London in this time period. Accurately, beautifully done. It's my favorite of the Pottle Boswell volumes, several of which are in this room. They're just not together. They should be together, but they're not. And then the last one that we can do here is Italian Days, Barbara Grazzuti Harrison. This is a great travel work, a work of travel writing. This is all about Italy. But it does more than just say, and today we saw the Trevi Fountain. It's much more than that, as all great travel writing is. It's pithy, it's sad, it's incredibly sweeping. I love it. Absolutely love it. If I were to make a list of, I don't know, the top 10 works, well, not top 10, maybe, the top 20 works of travel writing, this would be on that list. It's incredible, and definitely something to read if you are in love with any part of Italy. Definitely. I am in love with 2 parts of Italy, one much more than the other, and 2 just in general. So I had to have this, and I go back to it. I go back to all of these things. But anyway, that, a little bit haphazardly, that is this shelf. So we're going to wrap this up a little bit long, and we'll move on to the next one. The next one is down low enough so that I might have to sit. We shall see. I will wrap this up, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.